The Sultanate of Oman is on the southeastern coast of the Arabian Peninsula. The capital of the southern Dhofar region is Salalah. We approached the commercial port some 10 miles out of town in the early morning and found a fleet of 4x4s waiting for us. Along with our driver, we set off along the coastal highway, stopping first at the small fishing village of Taka, where the main catch is sardines. The guide explained that this was the hometown of the Sultan's mother. Passing the mosque, we then continued to the ruins of the ancient port of Sumaram. This UNESCO World Heritage Site was historically one of southern Arabia's main frankincense trading ports. Like many port towns, it was built on a creek for defensive purposes. The site is reputed to contain the ruined palace of the legendary Queen of Sheba. There are the remains of houses and warehouses. Oman is still one of the world's biggest producers of frankincense, which is made from the resin of the frankincense tree. This little doorway was the access to the port. Driving inland, we arrived at Wadi Dabat, a valley of breathtaking beauty, where lakes, waterfalls and lush vegetation create a natural paradise. The wadi is home to grazing herds of camels. Our next stop was at Ain Hamran, or Hamran Oasis. In the rainy season, between June and August, water rushes down between these mountains. For the rest of the year, there's a constant supply of water from the oasis pool. The area is very popular with bird watchers, as several species nest in the age-old trees and shrubs throughout the year. We passed several villages on the way to our final stop at Ain Razat, where there's a small river. The hill above the valley is studded with caves of all sizes. The river's fed by little streams that run out from the rock, and the presence of fish shows that these must run all year. A true oasis. It's popular with the locals, and this lady was quite happy for me to take her picture. All too soon, it was time for our driver to take us back to the ship. That evening we sailed out of Salalah and dropped the pilot, who was given a rousing farewell on the ship's siren. 2 days later we arrived in Muscat, capital of Oman. As the sun rose, we got our first sight of the giant incense burner, symbol of the city. Moored beside us was the colossal Aida Prima. First stop today was the Sultan Qaboos Mosque, named after the current Sultan. It's the only mosque in Oman open to non-Muslims, but only those who are appropriately dressed. Clothing is checked at the entrance, and if people aren't properly covered, they can rent clothes at the shop. Once through the gate, it's quite a long walk through beautiful grounds to the mosque itself. The women's prayer hall, lit by crystal chandeliers, can hold 750 worshippers. Across an open corridor is the courtyard, the floors and walls of which are made of marble. The tallest minaret is 300 feet high. The main prayer hall contains 35 chandeliers, the largest of which is 46 feet high and has a staircase inside for maintenance. They're all made of Swarovski crystals. On the floor is a 45,000 square foot one-piece handmade carpet, which took 600 women 4 years to make. Bringing together several classical designs, it contains 1.7 billion knots. The walls are completely covered with white and grey marble, decorated with murals of leafy patterns and geometric designs. An outer courtyard brings the total capacity of the mosque up to 20,000 worshippers. Smaller minarets mark the four corners of the complex, which is surrounded by flowers, lawns and water features. Next, we drove back into the city centre. We spent some time at the Mutra Souk, arguably the best in the Gulf region. It's a labyrinth of colourful stalls selling everything from gold jewellery to frankincense and myrrh. They also do a good line in lamps. From here we took a stroll along the Corniche, a 3-kilometre promenade along the seafront, dotted with statues. In the harbour we could see the yacht of the ruling Al Said family. We turned back at the Mutra fort. All along the Corniche are little shelters with fancy gold tops. The beautiful blue-domed mosque was built in 2006 in memory of the Sultan's mother. It's not open to non-Muslims. Returning to the bus, we drove further along the Corniche to the Beit al-Zubair Museum. The first thing we saw was a collection of goats which had been painted by local artists. A similar idea to Liverpool's Super Lambanana. We couldn't film inside, but in the grounds is a reproduction parasti, a traditional house made from palm fronds and trees, which is still used today in villages across the country. There's also a display of cooking pots and a model village. Leaving the museum, we saw typical modern houses and old fortresses on the hilltops. Close by is Al Alam, one of Sultan Qaboos's 6 palaces. The beautiful floral outer grounds are open to the public. The palace itself, behind these closed gates, is private. Back on board our ship, we watched the other excursions returning. As the sun set, the lights came on in Muscat. The equally brightly lit Aida Prima left the harbour, and we followed soon after. Separated from the rest of Oman by part of the United Arab Emirates is Khasab. It sits on the edge of the Strait of Hormuz opposite Iran, backed by the Hadjar Mountains. The only way to explore inland is in a four-wheel drive vehicle. The paved roads of Khasab soon give way to gravelly mountain tracks. We detoured from the main route to go to a viewpoint overlooking the coast, often called the Norway of Arabia. Our guide explained where we were going next, and we went back down to the valley floor to join the road to Jebel Harim, which means the Mountain of Women. As we made our way up, we passed chalky limestone verges and towering rock faces. We stopped at a wadi, or dry riverbed, and looked up. In the rainy season, water rushes down the mountain, across the road, and disappears over the ledge. Climbing again, our next stop was at the small Bedouin village of Sayar, 3,500 feet above sea level. As well as growing crops, they breed very friendly goats. From here we saw little farms even higher in the mountains. Rain brings loose rocks down onto the road, which needs constant maintenance. We passed more hamlets and met another convoy going the other way. It's a bit of a tight squeeze. On the top of the mountain, at 6,800 feet, is the government radar station, and we continued to climb towards it. Eventually we passed the radar station and descended a short distance at the other side. This was as far as we were going, and we stopped on the rim of a canyon. After looking at the view, it was time for coffee and dates. The coffee was a bit on the bitter side, and I don't think Chris liked it. On the return drive, we stopped in this rocky area where hundreds of fish fossils have been found, showing that these mountains have been thrust up from the seabed millions of years ago. There's very little natural vegetation in the mountains, but these look like fruit trees. We headed back down the way we'd come, passing Saya again. Eventually we got back to the tarmac road and had a last look at this fantastic region from the ship.